financial aid. I brought a friend with me today who he and I met at college many, many years ago, and he brought this to my attention. He is he's on the board of the Willington Scholarship Foundation. It's a 503(b) or C organization, but it's a chapter of the Scholarship America organization, and I'd like him to say a few words.
Thank you, Senator Martin. Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. My name is Dave Gabriel. I'm from Willington, Connecticut, and I'm a member of the board of directors for the Willington Scholarship Foundation. We are a 503(c) corporation with the state of Connecticut, and I'm here to support HB 5128, along with the recommended amendments that Senator Martin has proposed. Our group raises donations from local residents and businesses to provide scholarships to graduating seniors and others from Willington who are pursuing post-secondary education. While the bill being discussed today does not specifically address the need to stop scholarship displacement, it is a step in the right direction by ensuring that students will know upfront how their private scholarships will be treated by Connecticut schools to which they have applied. Scholarship displacement occurs when a student receives a scholarship after their initial financial aid award, and the college or university reorganizes their institutional aid package, often leading to a net zero gain for the student. This process is taking money away from the student. This is detrimental both to the student and to the organization providing the scholarships. Residents and businesses who make donations to our foundation have questioned the value of our scholarship if the college just displaces the money in their financial aid package. Students who have won significant amounts of private scholarship funding should consider each college's outside scholarship policy when calculating the net price of the college's financial aid award letter. This can affect the trade-offs between the college's affordability and the college quality when the student is deciding which offer of admission to accept. Several states, including California, Maryland, Pennsylvania, New Jersey, and Washington, have all passed legislation banning the practice of scholarship displacement, and several others have bills under consideration. I can only urge this legislative body to take this step forward, a step to provide the students the information they need in making a very critical decision about their future.
David, thank you. Senator Martin, thank you. I have one question. I would just see if my colleagues have some as well. I think Representative Cooley does. I just want to make sure I understand. Are you advocating and do you support that this policy would impact not only public institutions, but our private colleges and universities in Connecticut as well?
Yes, sir.
So you think it's appropriate that the legislation that we pass would impact them as well, right?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. Representative Cooley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to thank you, the Senator, and you, David, for coming in and testifying before this committee. Since you mentioned that you basically are part of a private scholarship program, one of my concerns is you have students spending a lot of time trying to cobble together scholarships. They're putting in sweat equity. And then to turn around and say, we're going to take the money from, displace the money elsewhere that they've earned. You basically had them work through the process of trying to get a second scholarship, and all that sweat equity essentially disappears. So my question to you, since you work with regards to a small private scholarship for your residents, if you could briefly walk the committee through what the student needs to do to get that scholarship, so we have an understanding of the sweat equity the students are putting in to go find this funding, additional funding, that then ends up in a number of institutions where they don't get anything for that effort. Would you be willing to do that for the committee?
Sure.
Thank you.
In my case, as I said, I'm a member of the board of directors for the Willington Scholarship Foundation. We're a chapter of Scholarship America, which is a national organization. Individual chapters represent various towns and locales. Students that are from the town of Wellington can go out on ChapterNet, which is the Scholarship America website, and apply for scholarships. They can apply across the boards for any scholarships out there. And specifically in our case, they're applying for scholarships from us because we're in the town of Wellington and we give scholarships to Wellington graduating seniors. The process, it requires them to fill out an application to provide us with details of where they're planning or schools they're looking at, things they're thinking about doing. And it also requires them to give us some financial background because we give out both merit-based scholarships as well as needs-based scholarships. We also have a program which we recently instituted where if a student has completed their first year of post-secondary school and successfully, and their intention is to go on, they can apply to our organization for what is a renewable scholarship. And the process is very similar. They have to go out and apply for it. We take all of the applications and we look at how much money we've managed to bring in and how many scholarships we can afford to give out. And we try to give them out equitably based on merit and need.
Thank you. So essentially, a lot of people are doing a lot of work. And
There's a few people doing a lot of work.
a few people doing a lot of work. And in a number of cases, there are institutions that are then clawing back funding in other areas, which seems to be, I mean, I'll be blunt, if this were being done in the private sector, this would be a serious problem legally. I have moral problems with what they're doing. You know, you're asking somebody to go out and then clawing back essentially what were the terms before. So they're in a gray area here, but essentially I understand your concerns because you're asking students to fill out scholarship applications. In many cases, they're filling out essays and spending a lot of time on those essays, and then they're getting no reward if they earn that scholarship, if that scholarship then displaces other monies. So thank you for your testimony.
Can I just add, you know, I put 4 kids through school, and you know, we fill out as a family, we fill out the FAFSA forms, and then you wait to see what the financial package is from whatever university or college that you get. And then you're shocked to the family contribution portion of it. And then it's sort of like rubbing salt in the wound when you're told that your daughter has applied for a scholarship and from the Rotary Club, and you all get all excited. Gee, here's an extra $2,000. I still got to go find some extra money. But to learn that, gee, the college or the university is going to take back their funding assistant grant program, whether it's work study or grant, scholarship, whatever it may be. But yet here you are, you got to give it to they're just going to lower the amount that you've already been awarded. Is that fair? I don't think it is. Listen, I interpret it like this here. My daughter worked hard for her A's, right? And now all of a sudden, because of these policies that the universities have, now she's got to lower her grade A to a grade B. And the student who got a C has now just been given an award of a grade of a B. Is that fair? I don't think it is. And in addition to that, how about the legislation that we passed, I think it was last year or the year before, where we allowed our college athletes, I think it was on a national level, right? We are now allowing our college athletes to receive advertisement money. Are we taking away their scholarship because now they're making $1 million? I don't think we are. We're still giving them a full scholarship, a full boat. Where's the justice there for these kids and families who are really struggling to pay for their higher ed? And we have our institutional policies that are taking money away from them. I don't get it. So.
Thank you, Senator. Representative.
Thank you very much for your testimony, and you're exactly the kind of folks that we want to hear from when we're considering legislation like this. We did a bill last year that did not pass that would have banned the practice entirely one of the arguments that were made at the time that sort of held this up was this one, and I just wanted to ask you if you could react to it. Some institutions would argue that they oversubscribe, they overpromise the amount of need-based scholarships that can be provided to students, anticipating that some of those promises will be displaced by other scholarships, merit scholarships. And so, in an attempt to sort of entice students into their institutions, they will make a promise based on their track record. I think that they feel like they understand how much scholarship displacement they can reasonably expect to occur. If we ban scholarship displacement, the argument would go that they would not oversubscribe the need-based scholarships. And so the size of financial aid packages would diminish at the time that students are deciding where to go. And that argument is what I think sort of requires the need to collect more data. And so I'm curious to know, what your reaction is to that argument, whether or not you see that if there's any credibility to that argument.
Honestly, sir, no, I do not. The fact is, you're talking in the same way that the airplanes tend to overbook their seats because they anticipate certain people aren't going to show up. But when they all show up, who gets hurt by that? In this case, it's the students who are winning scholarships, who are going out of their way to do the work and get the A's and earn the scholarships. They're the ones who are being hurt by this policy. The schools should not be overcasting how much they think they're going to get. They should be casting financially what they know they have and what they can put out there. And these private scholarships should stay right where they are. Again, I point out to the fact that I've had donors question the value of private scholarships if in fact the school is just going to take that money away and give it to someone else. There are whole organizations like Scholarship America across this country who fight every day to try and provide these kids with an opportunity for education. And these schools are just taking it away from them.
I'd like to add, broken promise. You solicited me to attend that university. You gave me a financial package, and you're now going to change it because you're allowed to, because of a policy that I have within the university. I call that bait and switch. I also call that sort of misleading a family. Also, I would also call that a almost truth in lending practice. I'm a real estate broker. I gotta disclose, I've got to inform my customer or client, right, as to here's the truth, right? They're not telling us the truth. Oh, by the way, we've got this policy that says if you get an additional $2,000, you got to come back and let us know so that we can make an adjustment to your financial package. By then, I've already committed to your university. That's baloney. Sorry.
I appreciate your passion about the issue. As a real estate broker, you're probably familiar with the idea of fine print.
Some of it's bold too.
And I think that, that is, I mean, a lot of what we're describing is in the fine print of the packages. And so, what this legislation as it currently constructed is to sort of bring that, make sure that they're printing their policies in large print and that they're appropriately informing students of what to anticipate moving forward. But I completely understand your perspective on the issue, and I understand how hurt and disappointed parents might feel or students might feel when they have the rug pulled out from underneath them. I guess, and I'm going to ask this in a particularly provocative way, and so I do that to sort of elicit a strong response one way or the other. So I guess what you're arguing is that that even if this policy, if we were to ban scholarship displacement, even if it would hurt a student who has unmet need in favor of a student who has ample resources and does not have unmet need, but has earned a merit scholarship, then you think that would be an acceptable outcome?
The issue of displacement is a very complex one. It's not a cut and dry black and white issue. And the difference between a student with fully met need versus one that has not got fully met need has to be a consideration in the bill that would be brought up. If a student has fully met the need, all of their financial needs, displacement off of loans or work study are a perfectly viable option. But to take money away from a student who hasn't got his fully met need, that's where we're addressing.
Thank you. That's an important distinction. I appreciate the clarification. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your time. Appreciate it. Have a good rest of your day.
Thank you very much.
All right, Representative Cheeseman is next, and then Representative Carney is on deck. Good afternoon, Representative.
Good afternoon, Senator, Representative Haddad, Representative Haynes, fellow members of the committee. It always feels like coming home when I come to testify in higher ed because that was one of the first committees I served on when I was elected. I appreciate you giving me the opportunity today, and I'll take the pink bag down. It's somewhat of a signature thing, but I don't think everybody needs to see that. I appreciate having the opportunity to testify on HB 5129 today. We all know the challenges that face students as they go to college. They're living far from home, they're not with their support systems. And we know that every day, particularly post-pandemic, there are many things going on in their lives that they're going to have to confront. I believe as they enter school, they should all have the option of living in substance-free housing. We know the damage that substance abuse can cause. The most challenging and perhaps dangerous period for young people entering college is the first 6 weeks, when they're exposed to new things. As I say, when they're far from the support network. American College Health Association surveyed 54,000 undergraduates in 2022 about drug use and alcohol use, and 42% were using cannabis, close to 80% reported using alcohol. And particularly as young people go away, we all know there is such a thing as peer pressure. If you're in an environment where this is not a daily use that you're seeing, where you are surrounded by people who share your desire to certainly start college in a way that you can truly take advantage of everything on offer and develop good academic habits. You know, prolonged alcohol use, prolonged cannabis use, any kind of substance use, as you're attempting to form those new good habits away from home, this is going to have a very damaging effect. You know, alcohol makes people do bad things. It affects you physically, it affects you mentally, it can create violent behavior. Colleges that have more substance-free housing, simply from a financial point of view, see much less vandalism. And again, research has shown the very damaging effects that cannabis has on the developing brain. If you don't develop the good habits of abstaining, or at least learning how to limit your use in your early college years, it's highly likely you're not going to have a good outcome. You won't develop those good work habits. You'll have less academic success. UConn prides itself on its graduation rate within 4.1 years. That's huge. And I think as students go forward, not only is this beneficial to them, a New York Times study found even those students not living in substance-free housing find it valuable, find it worthwhile. And I believe if we're really serious about offering our young citizens the best opportunity to succeed in college, we should offer them the opportunity, at least in their early years, to live somewhere where they're not confronted with this, where they can live in an atmosphere that's calm, where they're surrounded by people who share those feelings, that's not crazy on the weekends or full with smoke or alcohol fumes. I think they deserve that. And I think our colleges and universities would be well advised to provide that, because that's a great way to help them get off on the right foot and ensure academic and personal success. And I want to thank you for your time, and I would urge support for this bill. And I'd happy to take any questions if you have them.
Thank you, Representative. I do have one that the coalition representing our independent colleges in their testimony say that, they oppose this in part because decisions like this should be left up to the institution. Do you think, I assume that you think that's not a persuasive argument and that this is not the bill would not be an overstep by state government in regulating what happens at a private college?
I think we do lots of things that regulate private entities, and I think it's in the best interest of those colleges to provide this as an option simply because I think it does help ensure academic success and a safe environment for their students.
Thank you, Representative. Representative Cooley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Representative Cheeseman, for coming and testifying. I noted your strong passion for the argument. And I think that, I'm going to use a Grateful Dead reference here. Even the Grateful Dead fans have a substance-free zone for the deadheads known as the wharf rats so that they can enjoy the music without the temptations. I think if deadheads can agree to do that, whether they intake or don't intake, that they respect their fellow deadheads, their wharf rats, to have that kind of a zone. I think that the colleges can do the same thing for young students, 18, 19, 20, 21 years old as well. So I want to thank you for your testimony and the passion behind it.
Thank you.
Representative.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I thank the Representative Cooley for letting me know about the Deadhead concert. It's good to know. As a fan, as somebody that has a touch of gray, I'll definitely keep that under consideration. Representative Cheeseman, thank you so much for testifying on this very important issue. When I went to college, there was a special dormitory floor set aside, actually a whole building for those who wanted to be substance free. And I can tell you a lot of those people that I've kept in touch with have gone on to do great things, have been very successful in college and after college. So I very much do appreciate you bringing this to the forefront and talking about this proposal. Hopefully I'm not putting you on the spot here, just for my deliberations. Do you have in mind a particular number? Is it a hard number per college or a certain percentage that should be set aside for this substance-free housing?
I don't. I think if you look at the average size of the freshman class and perhaps you think, well, we should offer the option to, I don't know, 25% of our freshmen. I think once you get through that year, you have found people with whom you share common values. And it may be easier to say, hey, I know I'm going to live with John and Emily and Susan because none of us smoke, none of us drink. But I think certainly in those early years, I would leave it to the committee. This is your purview. Obviously, you're going to consult with the institutions of higher learning. But I do think if I were to throw a figure out, maybe 25%, I'm not going to be prescriptive. I believe having the option is there. And indeed, if the colleges found there was more demand, then they could respond to that. If you say we have 100 slots for substance-free housing and 500 students ask for it, you know the demand is there. You would supply that demand the same way you would ideally if you found different courses oversubscribed. Hey, there's demand, we're going to add another section. So they could respond to the market and maybe start with 100 or whatever and then go from there. Obviously, it would depend on the size of the institution. But I think there's a sensible approach to this. And I would welcome the opportunity to see our institutions of higher learning embrace that approach.
Yeah, I appreciate that answer, and I think that's certainly a great idea. Making sure that's on the housing application. Do you want substance-free housing? So we know those people who are absolutely adamant that they want to be in that environment, that they want to have a floor dedicated to ensure that it is absolutely 100% substance-free. So I think that's a great way to look at it and make sure at least it's on the applications as well. So thank you very much, Representative Cheeseman. It was a pleasure and I appreciate you again testifying.
Thank you very much.
Representative Turco, followed by Representative D'Amico.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Hi, Representative.
Good
I
afternoon.
actually, when I saw you come up today, I was looking for a different bill,
Yeah,
which
I
you've
know.
testified frequently in this committee.
Back for that, hopefully next year.
But I do like the concept of this bill a lot. Really thinking back to my days, living in the dorm as a freshman, here at a university, and seeing some of the things that happened from individuals that maybe drank too much, damage to the dorm rooms, or just feeling like it was an unsafe environment at times. I think students should have the ability that want to live in a completely substance-free facility, should have that right, as your legislation proposes. Just have a few clarifying questions. So you mentioned, well, the legislation says residential facility, but based on the demand, I would assume if this bill was to go into effect, the university would send with their housing questionnaires over the summer. If students want to partake in this, based on that demand, I'm assuming a university would decide how much housing, what buildings would be included in this. But would you be supportive if for some reason there wasn't as much demand and it wouldn't make sense to dedicate a whole building? Maybe it's floors 1 through 3 are substance free, you know,
I
something
think
like
you have
that.
to operate within, the real world. And if that were the case, and I would not, I would be remiss if I didn't single out Representative Carney, who will testify after me, who was the original proponent of this bill. So I'm happy to be support. But again, we're living in the real world. I think one would be concerned with, what's the HVAC system like? So if we're talking about smoking, whether cigarettes or, marijuana, even though it's theoretically not permitted, that might be one of the issues, or indeed, alcohol from a lot of drinking. So provided you could be assured that some of the things that the physical sort of quality of life issues in terms of, the environment were kept safe, then yes, I think that's, and again, if the floor above you is the people who are partying all night, that might not work so well if you're trying to get away from that. But again, let's not be prescriptive. Let's offer the best option. And indeed, the university might find maybe there's a smaller dorm that they could use or something like that. So yes, if the demand isn't there, knowing the shortage of housing, you can't tell them, yes, you have to leave 2 floors empty because you don't have the people. But I think you do have to bear in mind that if the goal is to provide the environment that these students are requesting, should take every step to try and do that.
And you mentioned, and thank you for answering that question. And you mentioned tobacco. That was going to be one of
Yeah.
my follow-up questions. When the legislation says substances, is that just alcohol and cannabis, or that
Yeah,
includes tobacco as
yes,
well?
Yes.
And is this legislation intended for the substance-free for use within the dormitories, or are we talking about individuals that are sober and never partake in these activities, even when they're outside of dormitories?
Again, I don't think they'd be prescriptive. I think it's while you're in the dormitory, you agree this will not happen. Ideally, you want people to lead healthy, productive lives. If they discover that there's something they can do on a very casual basis outside the dorm, we can't control that. But I think in their living surroundings, for those quality of life issues, that it's important for this.
Oh, thank you. And I know, smoking tobacco or cannabis in a dorm room and the use of alcohol
Yeah.
when students are under 21,
Yeah.
this is all
Yeah.
not permitted
Yeah,
anyway, but we know
exactly.
students are doing it.
Yeah.
So to me, it does make sense to allow students to have the opportunity not to have to live in that environment. So thank you for the legislation, and I appreciate you answering my questions.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Representative D'Amico.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So, Mr. Chair, I'm going to go back to piggyback on something that you had mentioned. We do have testimony in opposition to this bill, and the good chair referenced it. I'll reference a different part of it, and I'll just quote from the testimony. federal law requires all campuses that receive federal financial aid be drug-free, including cannabis. Given that the majority of undergraduates are under the age of 21, alcohol is prohibited for the most part in on-campus housing, unquote. So I'm going to borrow a phrase that's used quite a bit around this building on other hot button topics. Shouldn't we just be enforcing the current law rather than adding to the number of laws on this subject?
In an ideal world, absolutely yes. But as we've heard, if I have plenty of friends who go visit their children on college campuses, and you can't walk down the dorm room without smelling whatever. So we are operating in the real world. And I think in the real world, we need to do what is necessary to give students the option to live in the way they want as they're entering a new environment. Again, if your suggestion is that we enforce existing law and have, which would be the ideal, I agree, but would have in effect colleges acting as an arm of our law enforcement and our, legal and judicial system, then let's look at that bill. But as I say, this is a real world bill in the real world, and students, I think, deserve to have the quality of life that I think will, for those who opt for it, will really give them the best chance to succeed going forward.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank
you,
you.
Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Anyone else? No? Okay. Thank you very much, Representative. Good to see you as always.
Thank
Representative Carney, followed by Representative Acker.
Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. I, too, used to serve on the Higher Ed Committee. It was my first term, and I know I'm a seasoned legislator when none of the chairs or ranking members from my first term are in the building anymore. I think the only person on this committee that was on it when I was on it is Representative Haddad. I don't think, yeah, he was on. So I appreciate your indulgence. I'm here to testify on the legislation related to substance-free housing. So a few years ago, I believe it was back in 2015, New Jersey passed legislation related to this. It was for public universities only, and it was only for public universities where 25% or more of the student body were supplied housing on campus. And that legislation passed unanimously, both chambers. And both chambers, I would imagine, were controlled by one party. And Governor Christie signed that bill into the law and was very supportive of it. So that's really where I got the idea for the legislation. But I want to read something from an article I found that kind of relates to this. So it says Ryan had a pattern. He enrolled in college with the best of intentions, started drinking and drugging, and then would drop out. 3 years ago, as he prepared to enroll at the University of Miami, his fifth school, he had what he called a white light moment. I realized there was absolutely no way I'm going to stay sober, he recalled. So he decided to try something different. He enrolled at Rutgers University and moved into the Recovery House, a special dorm that offered substance-free housing and activities for students in recovery from alcohol and drug addiction. The support Ryan found there helped him stay sober and excel in his classes. And then he graduated cum laude. So I think that illustrates some of the types of effect or the effects this legislation could have. And I do understand that some of our public universities already do offer it. UConn does. I think that it would be good for all the public universities that supply housing to offer it. And the way I look at it is a collaborative effort. I understand there could be issues related that were brought up related to demand for that. But I do think that with all the issues going on, we see, fentanyl has entered our country and people are overdosing, or, students are drinking or drugging too much, and, they may not die from that, it's causing severe mental health issues, and they could ultimately commit suicide. I mean, these are very real things that are happening in our society and oftentimes can start in that college setting. And just to address Representative D'Amico's point, we've all been in college, and I think that the issue is if not necessarily the students that are, whether they're drinking or drugging or not in the dorm, it has to do, I think, with the overall atmosphere at that particular moment. So I see this not necessarily, not necessarily only for students in recovery, although that is what New Jersey did, and that is what UConn does, and actually Fairfield University and Sacred Heart do it as well. But really anyone who completely wants to abstain, and that could be for a variety of reasons. And it could be, to Representative Turco's point, as they did in New Jersey, a wing of a dorm. Doesn't have to be a full dorm. But I do think this is a good policy. I think it's saved lives in the state of New Jersey and a lot of other schools. A lot of schools have done this without legislation. I think as our society, unfortunately, deals with this ongoing issue, the best thing we can do is provide an atmosphere for students who are really trying to stay sober, and with that they can go on to do great things. But I think this will help along the way. So thanks.
Thank you, Representative. Let's see, Representative Haddad.
Thank you. And thank you for your testimony. I reserve my comment for you, since Representative Cheeseman was fielding a lot of questions. I appreciate the suggestion, and I'll just share with you just a quick anecdote. Many of you might find this hard to believe, but I'm not all that hip and happening. When I first was a freshman in college at University of Connecticut, I moved into a freshman dormitory, and you'll be shocked to learn that I didn't know who the Grateful Dead was. There was a poster on the wall. It had a skull and a lightning bolt in it, and I think it said "Steal your face," and I was scared to death. I'm not even gonna get to why that kid had a pile of oregano on his desk. I never did understand that. I was out of that dorm in 2 weeks, and moved into a place that I called home for the next 4 years, which was an affinity dorm. It was for laboratory science majors. I felt much more at home there. We called it the geek dorm. My point is this, I guess. Representative D'Amico is correct in saying that currently, just to be clear, no college or university can have a dormitory that permits the use of cannabis. And most colleges and universities severely limit the access to alcohol. What they don't have is an affinity floor or dorm that allows students to self-select into a place where they are confident that the other students will also be substance-free. And so I think there's merit in that idea, and I just wanted to, if that's in fact the real life ramification of passing a bill like this, would be to allow students to self-identify and self-select into a dormitory where they have an expectation that they share that value with other students.
Yes, so exactly. That would be the exact point of this, that students could be with, in that supportive environment. I would imagine, the RA on that wing or floor would also be part of that community. And it would allow them, really that safe space to refrain from the temptations of drugs and alcohol. And I will just say, when I was a kid, my cousin had a Grateful Dead bumper sticker, that Steely thing, and I didn't know who they were. And then I see this guy, Jerry Garcia. I'm like, that's the singer for that thing? So maybe I'll go to a concert with Representative Cooley one of these days.
There you go. You'd be fortunate to do so, I think. Thank you very much for your testimony. I appreciate your comments, and I hope that we can come to some conclusion on this. I would say that I think the University of Connecticut and about half of our public institutions already provide this option for students. I wonder if you have a thought about whether or not it would suffice if the system, if the major public institutions in Connecticut were to guarantee to voluntarily adopt this policy moving forward, with, or do you think that there's a need for legislation even if that were to occur?
You know, I mean, like I said, I mean, I want this to be collaborative. If no legislation is necessary, I'd be fine with that. You know, I just, you know, I'd love to sit down with universities and, you know, and flesh out what could be provided. I know one of the universities, I believe, said there wasn't a lot of demand for it. So try to find out, you know, what's going on there and work with them. So if there is that opportunity to do it without legislation, I'd be 100% for that.
Thank you very much. I have no other question.
Representative.
Thank you very much, Representative, for your testimony. Just to clarify, we are referring to all public and independent private colleges, higher educations.
So the way the legislation is written, yes. The way New Jersey did it, and I guess the way I had intended on it was just public universities.
Thank you.
Representative Cooley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Representative Carney, for coming in, and especially your comments regarding students coming in who have addiction problems, because we do have a crisis, and that was an area my mother worked in as a psychologist years ago. And one of the things that she always said is, those addicted, you have to create a space where you don't have your old temptations. So you can't go to the old haunts. You can't hang out with your old party friends. And it seems to me that this legislation fits within what is essentially the dominant view in terms of dealing with addiction, that the person suffering from the addiction needs to essentially create a space in which those temptations are not there, so that they can one day at a time, taking only one day at a time, provide themselves with a sober situation. Would you agree that that's essentially the impetus of this legislation, is to provide students that chance, those that did overcome addiction and are in that one day at a time move forward, and also for those students that don't want the temptation?
Yes, exactly. So one of the reasons the way I envisioned it was was slightly different from New Jersey. New Jersey did focus just on recovery. I guess it was my thought that, you know, maybe open it up, because unfortunately, I mean, it is the way it is, but there still is a stigma. And I do think that there are probably students out there that are very afraid to talk about it and to come out publicly regarding addiction, and this could be almost a way of doing that if they're living in that area and other students see them. So you know, I don't want that to be a factor against living in that area, because I mean, it really is about overcoming this. You know, they're saving lives. And I would say if there are other students, again, I mean, there's a variety of reasons why someone might not drink. It just personal choice, could be there was family issues, could be religion, to open that up to those folks as well.
Thank you. All right, I think that does it. So thank you very much for your time. Appreciate it, Representative. Representative Ackert, and then followed by Chancellor Terrence Chang after Representative Ackert. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Derek, Senator Slapp, Senator Mayer, Senator Kelly, Representative Haddad, Representative Rochelle, Representative Haynes, and the other distinguished members of the Higher Education, Employment, and Advancement Committee. My name is Tim Ackert. I represent the 8th District, which includes Bolton, Columbia, Coventry, Lebanon, and Tolland. I feel like a senator sometimes. Thank you for the opportunity to submit testimony on the following bill for today's public hearing. Raise Bill 106, an act concerning workforce development initiatives in the state. First, I'd like to start off with you. You kind of have it directed to be the Board of Regents for Higher Education. I think an area that they should do is collaborate with the Department of Labor and the areas that we're already working on. This administration already has taken some great initiatives in the apprenticeship area, which would be in the childcare and in teachers. I have been working diligently to remove, maybe this could be looked at by our this workforce group, the restrictive hiring that we have for trades workers in the state of Connecticut, that if we can unleash that so we can actually put more people to work. Another area that I'd like to be focused on is reciprocity. So in many states, and that's an area that we can do, that we can actually have, especially on occupational licenses, more reciprocity with areas, whether it's, doctors, nurses, real estate, whatever it may be, that we actually work with our neighboring states because we are a small state. And also, we do a lot of good things here in the state. We provide a lot of financial incentives that many people know about, many businesses know about. We were working to expand a tax credit, like the manufacturer's tax credit. We were trying to expand that last year, and they said, well, nobody knows it. Nobody's doing it because we don't promote the good things that we do here. And we do a lot of good things. We just got to pat ourselves on the back, but let people know about it. So those are some of the areas that I like to be included in this workforce when they're looking at that. Again, removing restrictive laws that inhibit career growth, also reciprocity, and promote the good stuff that we do, and continue to expand on what this administration done in apprenticeship programs and internship. So thank you for the opportunity to be here and the good work. I miss this committee dearly. So, but if you have any questions, I'm open to them.
We miss you too, Representative.
Thank you.
So,
Thank you.
Representative Cooley.
Thank you, Chairman. Representative Acker, thank you for coming in. You were mentioning reciprocity with other states. Would you also think of expanding that to the U.S. military? We have a number of individuals go through the military in terms of EMT training, nurses on the medical field. Would that be also an area that we
Yeah.
could be looking at reciprocity, so that we're not just looking in terms of those that have state licensed, but have been essentially gotten their training through the U.S. military in these specialized fields, that then on the civilian side could help fill gaps in our workforce?
Yeah, thank you, Representative. And I know you haven't been here for the decades that I have been here. We've done some good work on that also. We've already allowed that to happen more recently in the state, that you can use your training in the military, and if the hours meet what is in that work, that job classification, then you can actually sometimes sit for that test or work for it. So we've already done some good things in that area. I'm not sure what more we can do there, but there was some pushback on that. I myself am so fortunate, after my 4 years in the Air Force, the state of Connecticut took my job training, the on-the-job training, and actually said, I can sit for the dirty person's test for the electricians. And that gave me my path to 42 years of working in that trade. So, but yes, if there's anything we need to do more on that, completely open to making sure that those that have the training, the professional training in the military, that make sure that can be used for the job classification here in Connecticut.
Thank you, Representative. Great. All right. Have a good rest of your day.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right. All right. So Chancellor Chang is up next. You here? And I think you are not alone, right? You have some co-presenters. Okay. Your entourage. Here we go.
Sure. Oh, there we go. Thank you. Thanks to the committee for the opportunity to be here today. I'm joined by Dr. Ainsley Diamond. She's the Associate Vice President for Academic Affairs at CSCU. We have submitted additional testimony on House Bills 5128, 5129, and Senate Bill 107, but we are here to testify in front of the committee today to support the modification outlined in the legislation, Senate Bill 109. Established by the legislature in 2021, as you know, and launched in fall of 2022, the Connecticut Auto Admit Program, or CAP, has created streamlined access to higher education for thousands of Connecticut high school students. CAP has removed barriers to higher education by eliminating the application fee, saving individuals and families hundreds, if not thousands of dollars, and providing access and options that would not have been possible otherwise for so many students. Students who may not have thought about college or thought certain opportunities were unavailable to them now have worlds at their fingertips because of this program. Specifically, CAP offers eligible in-state high school seniors automatic admission into the Connecticut State Universities, Western, Southern, Central, and Eastern, and CAP partner institutions Mitchell College, University of Bridgeport, University of New Haven, University of St. Joseph, and Goodwin University. By increasing the number of high school seniors attending college, we increase the number of educated Connecticut residents who will be well prepared to enter the state's workforce. This year, CSCU partnered with the Common App. This is the first state and nonprofit partnership on direct admission in the country. It's something we should be very proud of, to make CAP an even easier, more intuitive, and more accessible program. Right now, high school seniors in the top 30% of their class, as identified by their individual high school counselors, they fill out one free application form and are automatically admitted into the 4 state universities and the CAP partner institutions. We've made it very easy to get information and to apply on our website, ct.edu/autoadmit. So this year, in the first round of auto admit in October, 2,266 eligible students applied, with more than 18,000 admission offers to the 4 state universities and partner schools, as each student got 8 offers. Each student got 8 offers to go to college by filling out one free application. That is incredible. The second round of auto admit was January 4 of 2024, and we saw even more applicants, increasing the total number of applicants from 2023 to 2024 by 73%. And the total number of applicants to the 4 state universities specifically went up by nearly 300%. So these are staggering positive numbers of increase from year 1 to year 2. So with the changes in Senate Bill 109, this program will grow even more dramatically in the years to come. This will positively impact first-generation, low-income, and minoritized and marginalized students most significantly. So before I pass this over to Dr. Diamond, who can talk about the effect that going to a GPA calculation will have over a percentile calculation, I want to give special thanks to our governor, who recognized the barriers to college admission for Connecticut students, the Connecticut State Department of Education, the Office of Workforce Strategy, and our high school counselors statewide, who have been so diligent, wonderful partners, really helping to find and get the word out for students. They've been incredible partners in building all of this for accessible and equitable access for our students. And of course, I want to thank you all, our legislators, because without you and the hard work you've done to make this program possible and a reality, we need that support to keep moving forward and keep making our students and our state better. So let me pass this over to Dr. Diamond.
Thank you, Chancellor Chang. And I'd like to thank the committee for your time. I'm Dr. Ainsley Diamond, Associate Vice President of Academic Affairs at CSCU, and I'm very happy to discuss the intended modification of the Connecticut Automatic Admission Program. The Connecticut Automatic Admission Program is a powerful step toward educational equity and was written with access and student success in its core. CAP has been a great success for graduating Connecticut high school seniors, allowing those students who meet the currently identified thresholds eligible upon application to be automatically admitted to participating colleges and universities. As written, the modification of this legislation would change the current eligibility requirements of a minimum class rank percentile to a minimum grade point average for students to qualify for admission to participating institutions of higher education. The advisory group and administrators of this program have been struggling to support students and high school counselors, as the current language requires high school counselors to calculate class ranking for every high school senior, determine eligibility for each partner college, has them, the counselors, write letters of acceptance as well as market the program to their students. Partnering with Common App reduced this administrative burden, but it didn't eliminate it. Counselors still have to calculate an outdated metric of student eligibility by using class rank. And the process is confusing to students and families as well. Changing the language of this legislation not only focuses on to only focus on students' unweighted GPA will be the last detail to make the program transparent, verifiable, and easy to implement. While we have seen staggering increases in participation in comparison to the first year of the program, there are thousands more students we can reach with making this simple change to the legislation. We appreciate the committee's raising of this bill and are in strong support of this modification.
Thank you both. Representative Haddad?
Yes, thank you very much for your testimony. When I look at the legislation, and I don't know if you have the bill in front of you, but at one point it makes reference to the fact that the Board of Regents should come up with a standardized method for calculating grade point average.
Yep.
Could you just explain to me how that factors in to all this? Because I imagine what it means is that not all grade point averages are equal.
Correct. When the advisory committee came together, they decided to use College Board's formula for calculating the GPA to try and ensure equal calculation across the board. So the Board of Regents did ratify that decision by the advisory committee to use that metric.
So, and so that also accommodates for the varying levels of difficulty of course offerings in high schools. An A in one level of biology might not be the same as an A in a different level of biology. All of that stuff is built into the GPA for a school. And so I want to make sure that that's accommodated for, and then also that any relative differences in the way that you an individual school would calculate it GPA between schools is also accounted for.
Absolutely. And that's a great point. And that's the ongoing conversation that we have all throughout pre and post-secondary education, around unweighted and weighted GPA. And that's why the suggestion was pushed forward for using the metric of an unweighted GPA in this case.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone? For Representative Cooley?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have just a couple of questions. Moving from class ranking, which you have 100 students, and if it's the top 30, you know who the top 30 are, to a GPA system. The immediate fear I have is that it's going to create grade inflation on the GPAs, and that's something colleges have been dealing with for decades. Put it simply, GPA at Harvard in 1965, a lot different than GPA earned at Harvard today. I'm just using that as an example. How would the system deal with the potential impact of grade inflation? And I do have a follow-up after that.
Right.
I have some thoughts. So thank you for the question, Representative. So the first thing I'll say is that, many of our institutions already have very high acceptance rates. And so students with a certain GPA of, let's say, 3.0, 3.3, or what have you, they're going to get accepted to our institutions. And so maybe at more elite universities and institutions that are exclusive and not inclusive. We take great pride in our inclusivity because there are so many students who they might have a 3.0, but in terms of what's on paper, but they actually have 4.0 or even 5.0 brains and potential, right? And that's really who we are. And so I think, not to say it's not a concern, but I think the where we're coming from and who we're working with, this program is really about the access, the fluidity, the accessibility, where we can just make sure that students know with a few clicks that they are going to get into college, right? Because the message that we send, I fear in society these days is that students don't need college or it's not worth it or what have you. And being the lowest cost, highest quality higher ed experience you're going to get here in Connecticut, we want to make sure that as many students know about that as possible. So at a macro level, it is not one of our more immediate concerns, but of course we appreciate the input, and it's something that we can bring back to our guiding group as well. But I think Dr. Diamond wants to add.
No, I think that that is the message, is the access and equity that is, like I said, it's very evident in the original legislation. And so safeguarding, yes, making sure that we are following, we're in year 2 of this program. So I do appreciate the comment, and it is something that we already are thinking about.
And my follow-up, which, since it's GPA, my immediate concern is that, students may be advised to take a less rigorous course, the old, take the easy A. I mean, in the college, I'm coming from a college background, but, the semester you have organic chemistry is the semester you take your easy A, so you preserve your GPA. My one concern with switching from the college ranking to GPA system is that it might entice counselors to suggest to students at the high school level to take the easier graded class than the tougher class and really pushing them, which probably would be more beneficial to them in the long run. Have you factored that concern into the switch from class ranking to GPA? Thank you.
Absolutely. And so, at CSCU these days, our mantra is we're going to control what we can control. And so we have a lot of school districts, we have a lot of school administrators, and in the work that we've done with them, they are at an incredibly high quality. We're very fortunate to work with the building administrators and the teachers and the guidance counselors that we work with. It doesn't mean that there isn't some advice that is given sometimes that maybe, makes things a little easier here and there for a student. But I think as a whole, we have found that the work that is done with our partners in this space has had nothing but high integrity. But again, I think this is the kind of input that we need to sharpen and make sure that we are seeing perspectives and angles that we may not see from the inside or from that middle lane. And so we'll certainly bring this back to our working group and make sure that it's heavily considered.
Representative Farrar?
Thank you, Senator Slapp. Hi, you both. Thanks for being here. I have 2 questions. I heard you mention in your testimony the significant increases in admissions that you saw from the use of auto admit, which I'm pleased to hear, especially since we instituted this a couple years ago. Do you all have data in regards to in utilizing that and having the auto admit, how many of those folks might have actually attended the institutions as well based on using auto admit?
Sure. I believe, Representative, you're speaking about the yield from the first year. We don't have
Yes.
the yield from the second year yet.
Okay.
Do you have yield numbers with you now?
I do. This is one of the reasons that we have really focused heavily on how we can change this program, because the yield was very, very small. For CSCU in the first year, we had 181 students. And I think a lot of that had to do with, the first year of any program, you need to focus on marketing and getting the word out. But the burden was solely on the high school counselors It was solely on the students and the families trying to figure this out. There were 8 different criteria. There were 8 different applications. So we've spent this year focusing on the partnership with Common App, and we still have a way to go to develop to make it even easier. I want to carry the burden. I don't want to push that off on our Connecticut high school students and the counselors. So we are anticipating, again, a very big yield, but we won't have those numbers until later in the summer.
Thank you for that and for acknowledging what a difference the Common App piece to this could make. And certainly want to acknowledge, I know we've been talking about just the reasons for the change from class rank to GPA. But if we made that change as a legislature, are you also anticipating that there would be more students captured in auto admit because of that change?
Yes, absolutely. I think that the student testimony, the anecdotal feedback we've already gotten has been so appreciative of making just this change is easier than their normal experience. I'm anticipating a huge yield from this change. They won't have to wonder, well, how and where do I get my class ranking? Students have access to their GPA. Sometimes on a weekly basis, it's being updated. They know where to go. They have a level of familiarity with the Common App. So our high school counselors would really serve as what is in their job description, that they would be supporting their students and sharing opportunities with them.
And I'll just add quickly that it's important to note that this feedback that we've received about this potential transition to a GPA calculation as the deciding metric, so to speak, that comes from the counselors, right? These are the folks that are on the ground with the students. They're running their show and the operation. And so they're the ones saying to us, we can make this so much bigger and better if we can get this change. And so, you know, we're not pretending to be the all-knowing in this case. We're really listening to the folks who are executing this program on the ground. And the fact that they would give us that feedback and look to try to amplify this even further, I think says a lot. So we're just very respectful of their opinions.
Thank you. Thanks for that information. And thank you, the chair.
Thank you. I just have one follow-up question, and it's actually kind of building off what Representative Farrar was asking about in terms of if your yield increases, and if we were to pass this legislation out of committee, we would get a fiscal note, I assume. I'm just wondering if you have any thoughts, if you want to predict, you know, what you think, assuming it would be a net cost to the state if we had more students. I don't know. Have you given any thought about what the cost of this would be?
At this time, I don't believe we're anticipating a fiscal note or a significant fiscal note. I mean, if anything, just to be very honest, the enrollment at our institutions, I think many people know, has been challenged at this time. We have capacity for these students. And frankly, I would, pardon me, I would love the problem of having too many students. I would love to be able to come to you and say, this program is so big, it's so great that we need more funding and more support from the state to serve even more students. At this time, I believe we have the capacity to absorb what we believe would be at least the first wave or 2 waves.
That's great. I was hoping that's how you would answer. So terrific. Any other questions? No. Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
You as always.
Appreciate the time.
Okay, so we are past the first hour here, so we're going to bounce back and forth between government officials and members of the public. So no offense to our friends from UConn, but you're going to have to just sit tight for a couple more minutes. And a gentleman from the town of Berlin. And we are going to skip to number 11 on our list, Brittany Lamar with the ACLU, and then we will go back to our 2 friends from the University of Connecticut. So, okay, great. Good afternoon, Brittany.
Good afternoon. Senator Slapp, Rep. Haddad, ranking members Kelly and Haynes, and members of the Higher Education Committee. My name is Brittany Lamar. I'm a Smart Justice Leader with the ACLU of Connecticut, the Assistant Director of the National Prison Debate League, Fellow at Yale University, and a dual Master's in Public Policy and JD candidate at UConn School of Law, and the former Tri-Chair of the Program and Delivery Models Working Group of the New England Commission on the Future of Higher Education Behind Bars that produced the recommendations that House Bill 5127 relies upon. I'm writing to testify in support of House Bill 5127, an act requiring a needs assessment for the delivery of post-secondary education programs in prisons with the request for an amendment. When the New England Commission on the Future of Higher Education Behind Bars commenced, the composition consisted of 83 members from all New England states that were policymakers, prison administration, academic institutions, industry professionals, and 20% of its membership was system-impacted leaders and consumers of higher education behind bars. The commission worked for a year to produce its report and outlined 15 recommendations to support incarcerated learners in prisons in expanding the quality and access to higher education in prison. One of those recommendations was to conduct a landscape of how prison education programs are operating within the state, what incarcerated learners have access to, the landscape of degree pathways, waiting lists, connection to campus upon release, etc., all ways in which to assess whether the quality of education inside of prisons reflects the quality of education on the outside. With the expansion of Pell, there are strict requirements for academic institutions offering classes inside of prison, which include an assessment of the experience, credentials, and turnover rates of prison education program instructors, whether the transferability of credits and applicability of credits toward degree programs are substantially similar to those of other programs within the college, whether educational programming, career advising, and supportive services are comparable to those offered on college campuses, and whether the college ensures that all formerly incarcerated students are able to fully transfer their credits and continue their programs at any location of the college that offers a comparable program. It's important that we apply this full assessment to all prison education programs, and it's important for the state of Connecticut to value the impact of education in prison and understand the true life-changing effects that education has on the trajectory of someone's life when they return to the community. I support the purpose of this legislation. However, it can be proved by one, throughout any assessment that we do, including the consultation of currently incarcerated learners about their needs. And then two, by expanding the scope of the assessment to include a second section wherein higher education institutions would be expected to outline their supports for incarcerated learners, what sort of access to research materials or reentry supports or academic advising, those things that Pell outlines, and any barriers that they have in fulfilling the expectation of the quality education in prisons. I want to stress that neither proposed section of this bill can be adequately fulfilled without the consultation of currently incarcerated learners, as they are the consumers of this education. We can make meaningful impact.
That is
in
your
this-
3-minute mark. Can you please
Yeah.
summarize?
Sure, we can make meaningful impact in the state of Connecticut by making a true commitment to investing in the most powerful tool with a positive correlation and impact on public safety and economic productivity, prison education. It's shown to prove a positive impact in the safety of prisons that run prison education programs, and it has an economic impact in the state of upwards to $4 to $5 for every $1 invested in prison education programs.
Thank you for your testimony. One question I had was just about do you happen to know what the size of the eligible population might be to participate in a program like this at any of our institutions or in Connecticut?
So the size of the population for students who are ready to enroll in college is small in comparison to the total population of incarcerated learners. But there are waiting lists at some institutions, and some institutions have less access to this than others in the state. So there's, especially with, one women's prison, it's important to sort of assess and get an understanding of the landscape of what waiting lists are like, what sort of students are interested in the program that don't have access to it, and in what facilities that lies.
And you had mentioned in your testimony, I think it's in both written but I just wanted to underscore this point. Can you point us in the direction of the appropriate studies that would show that prison education leads to a reduction in recidivism?
Yeah, I mean, it's cited in the written testimony, but there's several that have been done. At Vera Institute of Justice, they're also cited in the New England Commission's broader report that's also cited in the testimony. But the numbers of recidivism are extremely low for folks who have access or who also complete prison education programs.
Thank you. Are there any additional questions from members of the committee? I see no, but thank you very much for your suggestions, and I appreciate concrete suggestions for improving the bill. It makes our job easier. We'll take a look at those moving forward. Thank you very much. Next up are the folks from UConn. I think it's Gladys Kersaint and Rika Rin. They'll be followed by number 12 on the public list, Paul Amarone, and then Paul will be followed by Chris Edge from the town of Berlin. You're welcome to introduce yourselves and deliver your testimony. Thank you for being with us.
Good afternoon, co-chairs, ranking members, and members of the committee. Thank you for giving us the opportunity to express our support for Senate Bill 107, an act updating requirements for construction management oversight at the University of Connecticut, and repealing the requirement for a plan to increase the number of full-time faculty at public institutions of higher education. My name is Rika Ren. I'm the Associate Vice President for Budget Planning and Institutional Research. And with me today is Gladys Kersaint, Vice Provost for Academic Affairs. We're here today in support of this bill, which includes 2 provisions that update and remove obsolete statutes. I'll be addressing the first section, sections 1 through 3, which seek to eliminate the defunct Construction Management Oversight Committee and transfer the continued oversight and monitoring duties to the Board of Trustees, which has been the practice since 2014, almost 10 years ago. CMOC was created in 2006 to ensure appropriate oversight and implementation of the UConn 2000 program. It was charged with reviewing and approving the UConn 2000 capital project policies and procedures developed by the university. After several years of work and oversight, in 2014, the university notified the then governor and legislative leaders that the major work of the CMOC was completed based upon independent audits. The CMOC then recommended that the oversight function be transferred to the Board of Trustees, specifically the Buildings, Grounds, and Environment Committee. Following this recommendation, the legislative and appointed members of CMOC resigned, and despite previous requests made by the university to the appointing authorities to fill vacancies, no appointments have been made to fill them. The CMOC has been unable to meet since 2014 due to a lack of a quorum, and the board's Buildings, Grounds, and Environment Committee has assumed responsibility for this work. As required by statute, UConn 2000 projects also continue to be independently audited, and there have been no material weaknesses or significant deficiencies with internal controls reported to management for fiscal 14 through fiscal year 2022. Allow me now to introduce my colleague Gladys Kersaint.
Good afternoon. As you know, this bill also seeks to eliminate an obsolete requirement instituted in 2005 that requires the Board of Trustees of the community college, technical colleges, the University of Connecticut, and the Connecticut State University system to each develop a plan every 2 years to increase the number of faculty teaching at the colleges and universities, and to submit these plans to the Higher Ed Committee on a biennial basis. 10A-154C was enacted in 2005 at a time when state support for public higher education was substantially different. UConn at the time was attempting to increase the number of full-time faculty and reduce the number of adjuncts. While the university would very much like to add more faculty, the state budget outlook for the foreseeable future is unlikely to allow for such growth. In fact, to deal with structural deficits and projected state funding shortfalls, the university is instituting a financial improvement plan that requires all university departments, including academic departments, to decrease their budgets by 15% over the next 5 years. Given this challenging fiscal environment, the university is requesting that 10A-154C be repealed. UConn will continue to provide faculty hiring plans and reporting for research faculty with expertise in commercialization and new business formation as required pursuant to 10A-104C. Bond funds were authorized in PA 21-111 for these hires, but to date, the Bond Commission has not released this funding. Thank you for your support of UConn, and we urge passage of Senate Bill 107. We're happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you. I don't see any questions, so no, Representative Haddad, my apologies.
I can't resist the opportunity to just comment on how sad it is that we're not trying to increase the number of full-time faculty at our institutions of higher education. You know, when I you know, there's a lot of sports fans in Connecticut, and you know, a lot of attention is paid to where the University of Connecticut plays college basketball. Currently play in the Big East, where they can play football, that sort of stuff. I mean, I have an aspiration, and I hope that most members of this committee support it, that the University of Connecticut would join another league, and that would be the American Association of Universities, which is currently an organization that's made up of the 80 or 85 top research universities across the country. And the reason why I think that we should attempt to gain admission into that fraternity, if you want to call it that, is that they get most of the federal research dollars that are available in this country. And instead of having that conversation about how we can improve the reputational standard of the University of Connecticut through investment, instead we're about, you know, you're asking us to repeal a statute that seeks to increase the number of full-time faculty because it's obsolete because of our budget decisions here at the General Assembly and by the executive branch. I guess I'm not sure if there's a question in there, but let me just say, you know, I appreciate it. I regret that it's come to this, that we'd be considering repealing the statute. I'm not sure exactly if I really support repealing the statute. Seems to me that you could submit a report every year that says, we're glad to do this when you give us enough money.
Yes, we would be happy to increase the faculty if the bond commission would release the funding to do so.
Thank you. It's very diplomatic of you. There any additional questions? Seeing none.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Awesome. Good. Thank you very much, Chris Hedge, Town of Berlin. And after Chris, then we are on to Paul Amarone with the CBIA. Oh, you know what? And we have Chris. Is Chris our first virtual? Chris, if Chris is there, you can jump on in. Give Chris a second to unmute and get his camera ready.
Okay. I think I'm all set at this point.
If yeah, we can't see you, if possible, if you can put your camera on. All right, make sure you pull over or something, all right? Don't get
I am. I'm actually on the road. Pulled over.
Don't get us in trouble.
No, I don't want to do that. Representative Haddad, Senator Slapp, Representative Haynes, Senator Kelly, Representative Rochelle, Senator Maher, and esteemed members of the Committee on Higher Education and Employment Advancement. My name is Chris Edge. I'm the Economic Development Director in the Town of Berlin and a ECSU grad as well. I'm writing concerning Bill 106 and 108. I believe 108 is a step in the right direction to look at the barriers to entry for students and adults who do not have their own transportation. The transportation barrier has a huge negative effect on our residents' ability to find not just a job, but a career in Connecticut. This should be looked at as well as the gaps in the transportation system to employment hubs that provides these careers. I myself am working with the Department of Transportation, Connecticut Transit, and CT Rides for quite a while to move a bus line in order to get people to careers in Berlin. SB 106 is wonderful as it looks at the workforce development initiatives, but I believe it leaves out a key piece of the puzzle, which is to find out what is missing. An inventory is very beneficial, but understanding what is missing is vital to the growth of our state, as well as the best long-term investments in our higher education system. I believe the study should include discussions with the private sector to find out what is needed, care of training programs, certifications, and the like. This private sector input will not just be helpful, but better align our graduates with the career opportunities and marketplace when they leave school. Thank you very much for your time today, and I will take any questions if you have any. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Helps if I turn the microphone on. Yeah. Okay. So Paul Amarone, who is with us in person, and then virtually we will have Abraham Santiago, and he is going to be remote. All right, Paul, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Senator Slapp, Representative Haddad, Senator Kelly, Representative Haynes, and members of the Higher Education and Employment Advancement Committee. Thank you for the opportunity to present testimony today. My name is Paul Amarone. I'm the Advocacy Outreach Manager at the Connecticut Business and Industry Association, the state's largest business organization representing thousands of member companies, both small and large. I'm here today to testify in support of Senate Bill 108, an act requiring a study of transportation barriers that limit access to workforce development programs. As the state's largest business organization, CBI has heard several concerns from our business and nonprofit members and for both current employees and aspiring professionals participating in work-based learning programs. The intersection between employers, nonprofits, colleges, and universities has grown significantly in recent years, providing people with opportunities to learn in the classroom and in the workplace. Connecticut currently has nearly 100,000 job openings across several sectors, and we believe these programs are crucial for closing that gap. I'm going to just quickly summarize 3 examples, one from a nonprofit, one from a small manufacturer, and another from our affiliate, Ready CT. These are all also included in my testimony, so I'll summarize each one. But a nonprofit organization in Meriden recently came to CBIA with an issue regarding transportation barriers for a client coming from their home in Wallingford to their office in Meriden. For this client, the bus route from Wallingford to Meriden does not begin until 9 a.m. Their program at the office in Meriden begins at 9 a.m. That same nonprofit organization also deals with a significant last mile issue. For their clients, several clients who are participating in work-based learning programs, they have transportation to the town or city that they're participating in, the work-based learning program, but they have to walk nearly 2 miles just to get there. Moving on to the next example, a small manufacturing company in Shelton, Connecticut, a CBIA member, they have existing employees who were unaware of a bus route from Bridgeport to Shelton being abruptly stopped due to cuts in transportation funding. Many of the employees in their Shelton office actually come from Bridgeport into Shelton on a daily basis. And in speaking with the president of this company, one of her biggest concerns is the lack of dedication to transportation from the cities to our suburbs. And this dominantly affects people who are already at a disadvantage, especially in our inner cities. And lastly, Ready CT, who many of you are familiar with as a partner and affiliate of CBIA. They work with high schools to connect.
That is your 3-minute mark. Can you please summarize?
No problem. They connect their students to work-based learning opportunities, and they have several scenarios, and they'll be submitting testimony as well, where the students they work with simply can't get from their school to a lot of these opportunities, so they miss out on career advancement. In total here, CBIA is really supportive of this bill. We think it's crucial to filling those nearly 100,000 job openings we have in the state. And this is certainly a part of workforce development. And with that, I am happy to answer any questions today or in the progression of this bill. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate your time. I don't see any questions, so I think you're free to go. Thanks so much.
Excellent. Thank you.
All right. So up next is we have Abraham Santiago, who I see is online and ready to go. And then Ibelis Korea is on deck. So yes. Abraham, floor is
Can you hear
yours.
me, sir?
Yes, we can.
All right. Good afternoon, Senator Slapp, Representative Haddad, Ranking Members, Senator Kelly, Representative Hines, and all the members of the Higher Education Committee. My name is Abraham Santiago. I'm representing myself as a formerly incarcerated person who benefited from higher education in prison, and the ACLU as a smart justice leader in support of House Bill 5127. This bill is a first step, but does not go far enough and does not make room for the voices of the incarcerated and the formerly incarcerated. What would a needs assessment be without the voices of the people in need? Nothing in here talks about the importance of our voices. A lot of us have been in the background for decades, advocating, building programs, teaching, and helping write policy. Some historical perspective. In 1994, the so-called crime bill was passed. Among other evils, tucked in the legislation was a provision that stripped access to higher education for those in prison, which we know has long been a proven tool in reducing recidivism. Thus, the government still has a long way to go to provide tools and training to reverse the methods it funded in the past. But not having our voice at the table excludes not only an incredibly important voice, but expertise based on actual lived experience. The DOC is wholly unfamiliar with the process of education behind bars and would benefit from and learn that the most powerful and informed voices in this conversation is that of the person on the inside. They'd understand that the voices of people inside have a perspective that is vital to the success of higher education programming behind bars, which translates into success on the outside. I sat on the New England Commission on the Future of Higher Education in Prison, and MIT Educational Justice Institute, and New England Board of Higher Education project. The Connecticut Department of Corrections was also a part of this commission, along with the heads of DOCs across New England's 6 states. Among its most important recommendations, I believe this should be our goal. Connecticut should create a formal, multi-stakeholder group that includes us, the incarcerated and formerly incarcerated, to develop a detailed multi-year state prison education strategic plan, a plan that considers existing programming, staff, resources, and infrastructure, and then charts a path to expanding student-centered post-secondary and career pathways. The plan should lay a foundation for sustained state investment and include an annual progress report. It's progressive, it's forward-thinking, it will save taxpayer dollars, it will reduce the prison population. It's doable if there's a will. I and the ACLU of Connecticut support House Bill 5127 and encourage this committee to do the same. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir. I do not see any questions, so I think you're free to continue on your day. We appreciate your time.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, so up next is Ivelisse, and she is supposedly here in person. I do not see her, so going once. No, we will go to Sandy Valentine, and then if Ivelisse comes in, we'll go back. So Sandy, good to see you. Good afternoon.
Thanks so much. I'm here in support of HB 5129, an act concerning substance-free housing on college campuses. Dear Co-Chairs Haddad and Slapp, Ranking Members Haynes and Kelly, and the members of the Higher Education and Employment Advancement Committee. I am a person in long-term recovery from a substance use disorder and currently the Executive Director of Rhode Island's Recovery Community Organization. Today, I respectfully submit testimony in support of this bill with a recommendation for a revision. As you know, this bill would require Connecticut institutions of higher ed that provide on-campus housing an option for substance-free housing. My connection to this bill is my experience leading the University of Connecticut's Collegiate Recovery Program between October 2018 and February of 2023. During that tenure, I worked with over 100 students in or seeking recovery from substance use disorders. These interactions included one-on-one and small group support, as well as outreach efforts across campus. UConn's Residential Life Department, which coordinates housing, was instrumental in establishing a dedicated area for substance-free living in the fall of 2022. What went really well was that roommates who were matched were committed to keeping their rooms free from substances. What didn't go so well was the level of cannabis smoke that could not be contained. The odor came in under doors as well as in hallways and common areas. So while it's illegal, and that was referred to earlier during this hearing, on a campus funded with federal dollars, the level of resources needed to respond to reports of cannabis use in residence halls wasn't viable. I don't foresee it becoming viable, and an increased police presence on college campuses is not an environment that fosters learning. And by the way, I have 4 children. The youngest is a third-year student, so all 4 children have been on campuses and have that experience as well. For students in recovery, particularly those between the ages of 18 and 25, the usual ages allowed to live in a traditional on-campus residence, drawing attention to their medical condition by reporting others' use of substances is not a fair or reasonable request. So while I'm very much in support of this bill, I recommend language that includes appropriate air purification equipment for when the residential facility providing substance-free housing is not dedicated 100% to substance-free rooms. The legalization of cannabis in many states has created significant increases in public consumption. During my tenure on UConn Stores campus and in my daily work currently in downtown Providence, most days I encounter cannabis smoke. But I have 32 years of recovery behind me with the capital and tools built to navigate that. And cannabis was not a substance that I happened to misuse. I had other ones. But however, for young adults who are navigating their medical condition while pursuing their medical educational goals, we must create safer living spaces where they can sleep, study, and connect with peers without involuntarily being exposed to substances. I'm really grateful this bill has been introduced for consideration, and I hope the committee would be willing to provide the modification so that the benefit to students in recovery in Connecticut can be fully realized. And just since I haven't gotten the time limit yet, I wanted to add from what I heard during the hearing.
You actually did hit the time limit. I apologize.
Okay. I just do want to mention one thing. Parents fill out the housing application for first-year students. Parents pick substance-free housing, and that all falls apart 6 weeks, if not the first weekend on campus, because those students did not opt for that.
Sandy, thank you. Yeah, thanks for sharing your part of your own story. Congratulations on your recovery as
Thank
well.
you.
We're very happy for you. Seeing if there's any questions. I don't see any. So thank you very much again for your time, your input. Have a good afternoon.
Thanks.
Okay. So Evilise, I do not see her. Luis, Maddie is Luis with the ACLU.
Yes, I'm here.
He is,
I'm
okay.
virtually, sir.
Great.
Thank you. So good afternoon, Senator Slapp, Representative Haddad, Ranking Members Senator Kelly, and Representative Haynes, and to all the members of the Higher Education Committee. My name is Louis Matei Jr. I was incarcerated in the state from 2002 to 2022. I am a smart justice leader with the ACLU and served as co-chair of the Programs and Delivery Models Working Group on the New England Commission for the Future of Higher Education in Prison. I'm here to testify in support of House Bill 5127, an act requiring needs assessment for the delivery of post-secondary education programs in prison. For the first 15 years of my incarceration, the only educational options we had after attaining our GEDs were to either enroll in a vocational program that offered no certification or pay exorbitant out-of-pocket costs to earn a correspondence degree from an unaccredited predatory institution. With the implementation of the Second Chance Pell experiment, as well as the dedication of grassroots organizations, the landscape shifted, and so did my trajectory. I live by the mantra that you should take full advantage of opportunities because you never know who God puts you in a room with. I am a free man today due to the effect post-secondary education had upon my life. In 2022, the last 10 years of my sentence was commuted due in part to the hard work and opportunities I was afforded in those classrooms. Education is powerful. I saw firsthand how it transformed our cell block discussions from the basic day-to-day monotony to conversations and debates about the origins of human nature and our collective capacity. Spades tables turned to study groups as we grappled with dense text and the nuances of Latin. I have seen the potential of education. Do you want safer institutions? Offer post-secondary education. If you want to see reincarceration rates drastically drop, offer more degree paths. Do you desire safer streets with active change agents operating in your community? All we need is the opportunity, and it starts with education. The current iteration of this bill requires the DOC to conduct its own internal needs assessment without considering the voices of anyone who is actually in the classroom. Their main objective is custodial in nature. Safety and security govern their policies. Students on the inside often face ridicule from the department's employees. Snide comments such as, "So all my kid has to do to get into Yale is kill someone," are heard far too often. My time with the commission unveiled how far behind Connecticut is when it comes to progressive education delivery. Is this the culture we want assessing our needs? I recommend that this assessment be conducted by the higher education and prison programs that operate within our facilities. No one can tell you what they need more than the students and teachers themselves. The DOC's contribution ought to be assessing their own capacity. They are too far removed from the actual classroom to know what it is that students need. In closing, I ask that this bill be amended to allow the higher education and prison programs to take a leadership role in this assessment, then pass during this session so we can transform the trajectory of many more citizens and residents before they return. Thank you.
Louis, thank you. Timing was perfect. Any questions? I don't see any. So thank you very much for your time. Have a good
Thank you. Have a
afternoon.
blessed day, sir.
All right. You as well. Sarah Kaczynski is remote. I see Sarah here. And then Teresa Foley is next. Sarah, good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Greetings, Co-Chair Slapp and Haddad and distinguished members of the Higher Education and Employment Advancement Committee. My name is Sarah Kaczynski and I serve as the Director of Transfer Initiatives at the New England Board of Higher Education. And I'm here on behalf of the New England Board of Higher Education to submit testimony and enthusiastic support of House Bill 5127, which seeks to require the conducting of a needs assessment for improving the delivery of post-secondary education programs in correctional facilities. The New England Board of Higher Education, or NEBI as it's commonly known, is by way of background a Boston-based nonprofit and one of the nation's 4 regional compacts created to galvanize the sharing of higher education ideas and resources across state borders. Since we have leaders here today who have already spoken to the work that NEBI has done on the Commission for the Future of Higher Education in Prison, I won't repeat that. Instead, I'll say, as Brittany previously said, that House Bill 5127 is very much in alignment with the recommendations put forth in the Commission's culminating report, and it embodies the report's emphasis on cross-sector collaboration to assess misalignment between supply and demand when it comes to higher education and prison. I would also like to echo the comments made earlier and encourage that the consultation specified in this legislation include not just the institutions of higher education, but also consultation with currently and formerly incarcerated learners. To make use of the immense reinvestment of federal dollars for incarcerated learners and to realize the massive potential of post-secondary education in prison, NEBI believes that efforts must be made now to understand where each state in New England is starting from and what it would take to achieve the outcomes that are desired. The complex nature of delivering higher education in prison makes a comprehensive needs assessment the most likely way to set Connecticut on a path forward to success in this arena. As NEBI learned over the course of the Commission, infrastructure needs for post-secondary education in prison take many forms and are much more complex than what we see on our residential campuses. Access to facilities entails not simply access to empty space, but access to secured empty space. Technological infrastructure that's taken for granted in our college classrooms on the outside is in its earliest stages in carceral settings where access to Wi-Fi and laptops has historically been extremely limited. In some cases, simple word processing functionalities are not available on the limited forms of technology, usually tablets that are available to incarcerated learners. In light of this, we at NEBI would like to encourage Connecticut to consider including within the language of the bill a specific request that the cost analysis include an estimate of the cost that would be associated with implementing the infrastructure needed for internet access. This would be in line with the legislation's goal for assessing educational technology in a comprehensive assessment, but it's not specifically spelled out there. While the work of creating modern internet infrastructure in carceral settings is challenging, NEBI would like to stress that there are states in the region from whom Connecticut can draw helpful models, whether that's Maine with its nearly consumer-grade internet access, or Massachusetts where Wi-Fi hotspot pilots have been discussed. There are a host of challenges involved in transitioning from a situation in which higher ed in prison was a small-scale and loosely coordinated endeavor to a future state where higher education
Please
is
summarize.
Yes. Essentially, the way to transition from the fractured small scale nature of higher ed in prison to a future where we can really realize the individual and collective benefits associated with higher ed in prison requires that we assess needs, and therefore NEBI supports House Bill 5127. Thank you.
Thanks, Sarah. Any questions? I don't see any. Thanks very much for your time. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Teresa Foley is next. Teresa, and then Olivia Rinkus is after Teresa. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Representative Haddad, Senator Slatt, ranking members, vice chairs, and members of the Higher Ed and Employment Advancement Committee. I'm Teresa Foley, the Interim Associate Dean of Non-Traditional Transition Programs for Connecticut State Community College. I essentially manage the Second Chance Pell programs for our institution. I'm here in support of House Bill 5127, an act concerning the needs assessment for the delivery of post-secondary educational programs in prison. From national research, we know that providing higher ed programming in carceral settings is important and effective. 95% of the individuals who are currently incarcerated are getting out at some point in time. Every dollar that we spend on prison education programs saves taxpayers $4 to $5 in incarceration costs. Individuals who participate in educational programming while incarcerated are 48% less likely to return to prison compared to those who do not participate in educational programming. And we know that returning citizens who participate in vocational training while incarcerated are 28% more likely to be employed after release from prison than those who do not receive such training. So CT State offers the Second Chance Pell program from 5 campuses across the state, in which we enroll students in certificate and associate degree programs in 9 of the 13 Department of Correction facilities. This spring, right now, we have 366 students enrolled in 54 course sections across the state. We started our programs back in fall of 2016 through the Second Chance Pell program. And to date, we've enrolled over 1,800 students. We have 150 students who have earned certificates and 68 students who have earned associate degrees. Having served on the New England Board of Higher Ed Commission on the future of higher education in prison with members of the Connecticut State Legislature, the Department of Corrections, former Second Chance Pell students, colleagues from other higher ed institutions who offer programs within the DOC, and students who have graduated from the program. We can all attest to the value and the importance of the Commission's recommendations. The state of Connecticut did not design the physical structure of the Department of Correction facilities as higher ed institutions. That wasn't their charge. That wasn't the purpose. We are currently providing higher ed programming in what I call a paper pencil or whiteboard chalkboard world, in which we have no access to instructional technology, the internet, computers, and very limited access to research materials or library services. A well-designed needs assessment would provide the Connecticut Department of Corrections and the higher ed institutions the information they need to provide valuable and quality programming services for students who are incarcerated. The higher ed providers are fully aware that we cannot provide a full array of all the services available on campus. Thank you, sorry. But we can provide things that are as close as possible. So I want to end with a success story. We have a student who started in the Second Chance Pell program. He was serving over 25 years while incarcerated. He started a program with us in Second Chance Pell, was released, successfully graduated from Snuntuck prior to the merger. He's now managing 2 community-based sites for one of the higher ed institutions in one of the urban areas of Connecticut. He's just been promoted, has been very successful. There's a lot of opportunity for individuals who are incarcerated to gain the skills and the resources they need to be successful once they get out. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks for your time. All right, see no questions. We appreciate it.
Actually, just one follow-up question, which is, you describe in the final paragraph of your testimony I think the components of successful need assessment. How much of that do you think needs to be written? How much of that do you think should be written into the legislation itself? Put a different way, is there a common understanding of what an appropriate needs assessment would be? And do you think that in this case, it's the DOC's charge with doing the needs assessment? Are they and they alone capable of doing that? And is there a way that we can provide them with additional help to make sure that the needs assessment really provides, I think what we're all looking for, which is a comprehensive understanding about what it would take to run a successful program?
I think the value of a needs assessment is that, one, it needs to be independent. So charging DOC with doing a needs assessment is very effective, but doing a quality needs assessment, we're getting the voices of, as other people have testified today, getting the voices from DOC, the higher ed institutions, the students who have participated in it, who have graduated from the programs, Currently incarcerated students would be very valuable. Funding it would be great. Um, in terms of the components, I would really look at what DOC provides, what is the charge of the higher ed institutions, what are the needs of the employers, what skills do students need as they graduate, and come up with something that would combine those components.
Thank you for your response.
Thank you.
Thanks very much. All right, so Olivia, I'm going to be looking for Olivia here online. I do not see her. So we have one more, at least one more to add. Linda Kowalski is up now, and then that's the end as far as I see. But we'll give an opportunity if there's anybody we're missing. But Linda, floor is yours. Good to see you.
Today, on behalf of the Connecticut Radiological Society and the Connecticut Society of Respiratory Care Therapists, in strong support of Senate Bill 106, an act concerning workforce development initiatives. I want to thank the committee for raising this very important and timely initiative. We are seeing major workforce shortages in the area of radiological technologists and respiratory care therapists. And I would just suggest the committee may want to look at work that has been done by Comptroller Sean Scanlon. In this area, he has convened a health care cabinet. And on that cabinet, he has a subcommittee dealing with workforce development. They have made recommendations, which I can share with the committee if you've not seen them. I would also urge the committee to look at what you have done in the past and build upon that. You did set up infrastructure to develop a pipeline in the past for nurses. And that would be great if you could also look at doing that in the area of respiratory care therapists and radiological technologists. And we do feel that you can even see what I'm talking about by looking at the shortages across different healthcare settings. We have about a 50% vacancy rate. So again, we want to be able to fill these positions, attract workers into these areas. And we're hoping that we can continue to work with the committee to really try to address our growing healthcare needs in the state. And really thank you for spending the time on this important initiative. And I'll definitely circle back with the committee and get you what I mentioned in my testimony.
Great, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Yes. All right, I don't see any other questions. Is there anybody who we missed or anybody before we wrap it up? No? Okay. So that's going to do it for the public hearing today. We will be meeting twice next week, the Higher Education Committee, once in a forum, and that's going to be on Tuesday. And that's going to be kind of a large look, 50,000 foot kind of look at the quality and condition of higher education in Connecticut, funding, all that stuff. So that's going to be on Tuesday. And then we'll have a public hearing on Thursday with a number of bills that we already voted to raise. So I think that should do it. So thanks, everybody. Have a good rest of your day.